right, we have yet to hear, the world has yet to hear from the new supreme leader of Iran 3 days after he took the place of his father, who was killed on the first day of the joint U.S.-Israeli strikes. There have been no written communications, no public statements, no videos. So what do we know about how he might lead? Joining us, staff writers at The Atlantic, Vivian Salama and Graham Wood, who is in Dubai. Graham, I'm going to begin with you. Help me understand Mojtaba Khamenei.
So he's 56 years old. He's his father's son. And not much is known about him because he has hardly appeared in public before. What we know is that he has been at his father's right hand. And for at least 20 years, there have been murmurs of complaint actually from inside the Supreme Leader's office that if you want to get to the Supreme Leader, you have to go through his son. So I think one of the questions that's arisen is whether this guy's a reformer, whether he's someone who's going to bring something new. And all evidence is that if he wanted to bring something new, he had power before. So I think you'd have to be very optimistic to think that he's going to be a voice of reform rather than someone who represents the hard line that the Islamic Republic has taken for quite some time.
I understand there's probably a target on his head right now, but is it unusual to have not heard from him yet? No video statement, nothing broadcast to the Iranian people or the outside world?
It's definitely unusual. I mean, it's only the second time there's been a change of supreme leadership of the Islamic Republic. So it's not like we know exactly how it's supposed to change over. But, you know, we saw this bizarre ceremony where a cardboard cutout of him was part of the ceremony. So it's not normal for the person who is leading the country to be so deep underground that nobody's seen him. Nobody has any confirmation of what wounds he might have incurred in the opening salvo of this war. So pretty strange that we've seen nothing of him even after he's supreme leader, and also kind of strange that we had heard almost nothing of him publicly during the 30 odd years when he might have been speaking publicly as the son of the supreme leader.
And I know you spoke to at least one person who knew him, who called him the most dangerous man in the world and was much more of a hardliner than even his father was. I wonder, even though we haven't seen him, it's clear there is a structure in place, a command structure in place still in Iran. They are launching attacks, Vivian, including attacks across the Gulf, even on some of the friendliest neighbors they have, Oman.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this was always a concern going into this military operation where, unlike, say, Venezuela, where you topple the leader and maybe negotiate with others, it's a lot harder to do that, especially with the clerical structure that they have in Iran, where when one dies and they believe that it's martyrdom in this scenario, then another can be voted in his place. And that we see that with Mojtaba Khamenei, the Ayatollah's son. And again, he was not necessarily one that was rumored to be the likely successor, but in these current conditions, they believe that a hardliner would send a message that they are standing strong. And of course, to Graham's point, you know, the Iranians are pushing back on any questions about his well-being, saying that he's safe and sound. And they say that it's intentional that there hasn't been any video messages or any communication from him because he's in a bunker somewhere deep down underground, and any devices would essentially allow the U.S. and Israel to track him. And so that's their perspective. Of course, we do also hear that he might have been injured, and so it remains to be seen what his condition is.
What is the strategy, Graham, on firing across the Gulf? What does Iran think it's going to get out of that?
So Iran knows that the Gulf countries are, first of all, allied with the United States, and second of all, are soft targets. I mean, there's a hope that you can split away the Gulf countries from the United States, that they cannot take the missiles, they can't take the drones. And so they'll cry uncle and then ask the United States to come to heel. They, when Iran has been sending missiles and drones at Dubai, where I am right now, and there's been more that have been sent toward Dubai than toward Israel. So there's an understanding that this target is the one where you can really get the alliance of the United States to squeal.
And a lot
One
of
of the
that
things
also rests.
Go ahead, Vivian.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I was just going to jump in. A lot of that also rests on a couple of other factors. Where can you target that would have the greatest economic impact? And they see sort of those U.S. allied countries on the other side of the Gulf as being good targets. And then a number of them are also host countries to U.S. bases, and so in their mind, they are fair game for being targeted.
Vivian, why haven't we heard the president say he wants to seize the oil? He says that about pretty much every other conflict.
Yeah, I've been asking around about this, and me and our colleague Jonathan Lemire wrote about this a few days ago, where he's been biting his tongue for the time being, in part because advisors around him at the White House and some Arab allies believe that it would just further rattle the markets that are already severely rattled by this conflict. And so he himself was asked in an interview a few days ago why he hadn't talked about it, if he was considering it, and he said he didn't want to go there right now. Certainly. That's not to say that it's not going to be a consideration or roll off his tongue very naturally in the coming days or weeks. But for now, he is being very disciplined about that, in part as he watches stock prices take a hit and the price of oil continue to go up.